Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another deck profile. Today's video, a little bit out of my normal order. I got a few things to share with you guys. You may be wondering why I haven't done the Top Cut breakdown for the Carta Magica event. Well, I wanted to do it. There's two things with that. I was on like a mini vacation over the weekend, so I didn't get to do it Sunday night. I do want to get it to you guys tomorrow. But the other problem is I'm having some computer difficulties actually. So yeah, this is actually being recorded on my phone. But the reason I want to do this Vegeks deck profile and specifically talk about why Bibidi is actually not a bad card is because one, you guys have asked to see more of the decks that I'm actually playing, and two, I did play this deck at a locals this weekend, at two locals actually. And you know, with the pandemic and everything, I've only been to basically 3 tournaments, the 1K back in August and then these past 2 locals. So I do want to show you guys what I'm playing, what I'm messing around with. I do want to talk about Bibidi, and I want to get this video out because I'm actually having computer difficulties. So hopefully this gives me like a buffer day to get that all sorted out, and then I can get you guys the Top Cut breakdown for Carta Magica tomorrow. So I just want to keep you guys fully informed what's going on. And with that being said, we'll get into the deck profile. If you are new here, do subscribe. Check out the description down below. All the stuff down there really helps channel out a great deal. But anyways, this weekend I played Vegeks, and that's actually because I did not have my set 11 collection yet. I was only able to get my hands on a few cards. So I figured what was the most interesting deck I could play that only required like a very small minimum of set 11 cards, right? So I ended up finding my way to Vegeks. I do think the concept of Vegeks is very cool. I messed around with it a lot, you know, when it got nerfed on the list multiple times. So you guys saw those deck profiles if you've been following the channel for a little bit. So you guys all know what the leader does. I won't really spend too much time on that, but we'll go through the deck profile here, and we will start with my super combo lineup. So I did play the 1 Bibidi and 3 copies of the new Vegeta super combo. So why did I go with this ratio? Well, I really just wanted to see how Bibidi would perform, so I just played the 1 copy next to the SS Vegeta Prince Strikes Back. And I've said it a few times that I kind of thought that the Vegeta would kind of just outclass Bibidi because, you know, he cycles harder, puts dead cards at the bottom of your deck. He actually enables a few combos in the deck, like if you draw cards that you need in your deck, he puts them back, and that actually is really, really good. But Bibidi actually performed much better than I thought it would over the whole weekend, and it kind of makes me want to go with a 2-2 split of Vegeta and Bibidi, and here's why. There were a lot of situations where I wanted to combo when I was above 4 life. I had too much life, and this card was kind of just dead in my hand, and I wanted to be either aggressive with Bibidi or I wanted to defend certain criticals or just early game pressures that I just didn't want to take. So Bibidi actually filled that spot very well. There were actually times I wanted Bibidi over Vegeta. Maybe that's just a personal me thing. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's how I felt over the weekend. You know, I got about 10 competitive games in with, you know, the new format. Played against Gogeta, played against Gotenks, played against a lot of the new decks, and that's kind of how it felt. So in my opinion now, I've tested it more and tested it more in person, which I do value a little bit higher, and I really, really liked Bibidi. It did not seem like a terrible card, even though it's a maximum of 15k combo power. So next up, we'll go through the deck, the rest of it, I guess. We have 4 of our Unison. This guy comes into play when you mill him, so he is the best one for this deck. And I can actually see some more Overwhelm heavy Vegeks builds that maybe play like SS4 Gohan and SS4 Vegeta, but this is definitely not a super Overwhelm centric build, so this guy just pretty much did the job. And then for the rest of it, you guys pretty much know what this deck consists of. We have the 4 Kais. Again, Mill comes into play. This card is actually one of the reasons why this deck can still succeed, in my opinion. Again, playing with it this weekend, having those 10k combos allowed me to save games and win games that if this was just an ordinary 5k combo would have been much, much harder. And actually playing Vegeks over the weekend was weird because I went into the weekend thinking I was playing an aggro deck, but I guess that wasn't really the case because I really never ended games earlier than like turn 4, assuming my opponent wasn't playing a hyper aggressive strategy like Red Broly or something like that. Most games actually went turn 4, turn 5. So I do think that Vegeks does have a little bit less aggression built into the deck with the Bibidi nerf because this is no longer like a 34k beat stick for 1 combo. But this card was still actually a really big overperformer. And then of course, we have the 4 Vegetas and we have the 4 Trunkses. And I think when people look at like how good a deck is, they kind of just look at what the deck can do. And of course, Vegeks does really powerful stuff by playing cards for free just via milling them, which is inherently very good when you're free playing battle cards. That was one of the problems with like the Universe 3 engine, right? But when you look at this deck like contextually in the format, I think that's one of the things that people miss with like Red Gogeta as well. Red Gogeta, in my opinion, contextually to the format, it has a good matchup against one of the best decks, which would be Gotenks, so I think there is a place for it there. But blue and black that just have warp removal, that can give Gogeta a hard time. So even though Gogeta does something pretty interesting and kind of powerful, I think people kind of miss that contextual component. And I say that to say about Vegeks that, like, for example, this blocker is very, very relevant in the format. Against Red Broly, against Majin Vegeta, which I played against over the weekend, this guy being a free blocker was actually really relevant, and it actually allowed me to get to that mid game so that Vegeta and Red Broly couldn't like turbo rush me down, right? And again, I was talking about how I don't think Vegeks is as aggressive as it was without Bibidi, so maybe this is more of a mid-range / aggro deck. I've talked about it a few times where we don't have super impactful negates. That actually has changed just a little bit, and we don't have really great counterplays in black, so it's hard to be a mid-range control deck. I mean, I would not call Vegeks control in any way. Maybe mid-range pivoting to aggro, somewhere in that realm. But anyways, now for some of the more not so normal stuff. I did play 2 copies of Vegeks Father-Son Bonds. This is the Champion Pack promo. It actually was incredible over the weekend, and now I think this is obvious, like Vegeks is a super big RNG deck, so I really just played to the RNG of it, and you don't want to play for this because that RNG can be kind of bad where you mill this too often, and you can only play it if your board's clear and your opponent has 3 or more energy. So there were times I milled it and it got me back into the game, which actually felt really good. But there were also a lot of times where I would get a Vegeta and a Trunks on the field turn 1, and then turn 2 I could fuse into this and go into my 7-drop immediately after. So it actually was very good. Of course, 2 copies is not ultra consistent, but you know, when you do hit that turn 1, turn 2 Trunks Vegeta and then get into this guy with your 7-drop, it's actually insane. So I really do like 2 copies of this. I know a lot of people don't play it, but I liked it a lot. And then for our more standard Vegeks stuff, we did have 3 of the 6 drops, the typical 6 drop, and then 3 of the 7 drop. This is a really great engine. Sometimes I actually wish I had more copies. I really just did want to go into this almost every single game. Like, I didn't play against much blue this weekend, which I thought I would play against more blue. But when you're not playing against blue, this engine is actually incredibly good because there are a lot of other things that, like against green, for example, people will use their Frieza counterplay on a lot of other things. Like sometimes I'll even just like get a Vegeta off of my mills and they would Frieza counterplay it. I think you should always hold it for this. But you just have other baits in the deck, not so simplistic as that, but you have other baits in the deck that allow you to sometimes play this for free. And against yellow, against red, against black, this is always a really good play. So I did like it a lot. Sometimes I wanted more, but I think just with the space of the deck, 3/3 is probably the most optimal to go with. And I did main deck 1 Vegeks Mastery Merge. This card actually is really good. I like the fact that it has barrier a lot because, again, against green with the Frieza counterplay, this is actually a very safe card to go into. And they have to swing into this. And this is a lot easier to defend than your leader. Once you drop this guy, he basically just becomes your leader. He's essentially a deadly defender. Everything 15k or higher, unisons, battle cards, leaders have to attack him first. And luckily, he's one of the TP cards that is not very expensive right now. So if you wanted to play 1 of him or 2 of him, I think it's a very, very good card to tech. And I love the fact that he also fuses from the warp, unlike the other 6-drop Vegeks promo. Next up, for one of the very main engines of the deck, we have Trunks Elite Descendant. This guy brings out our Vegeta Reluctant Reinforcements, which unfortunately is a very, very expensive card still. This is probably the best turn 1 play for the deck. This is always what I would mulligan for, the Trunks Elite Descendant to get into your Vegeta. You definitely send any copies of this back into the deck, and it would be really unfortunate. Like, I actually had a game where I milled 2 of these, and then the last one was in my life, so Trunks didn't have a valid target. And actually, in that scenario, I didn't go for Trunks. I ended up discovering later that the Vegeta was in my life just by taking damage. But that was kind of like an educated move I made because I assumed that it wasn't very likely this would be in the deck. So otherwise, this is the best turn 1 play in the deck. But again, this deck is super RNG dependent, and when you're playing this engine, you do pretty much have to play the 4 Black Mass Saiyan Splintering Mind. And the thing with all that is, this combo is kind of degenerate. I mean, it's tougher to go for game with this guy because of your a little bit lack of aggression without the Bibidi being at full power. But like, there are gonna be so many times where, you know, you just don't have this guy in your hand, or you don't mill him with your leader, and then this is just not set up. It is kind of annoying in that sense, where you're really just trying to make that combo happen. But again, it is a super RNG deck, so you kind of just have to play to that RNG. And this, when it does go off, is really, really good. So I kind of wanted to leave that opinion about the deck. I think it's very, very RNG dependent. If you want to play something super consistent, I don't necessarily know if I would go for this. Like, you'll mill good cards the majority of the time. You'll mill cards you want to mill the most of the time, but sometimes it doesn't happen. But actually, I say all that, and there is actually a card in the deck that kind of fixes that scenario. SS3 Son Goku, Man on a Mission, is a card that a lot of people have been playing in Vegeks. I finally got to try it out for the first time this weekend, and it was really strong. I liked it a lot. And the reason is because sometimes on turn 1, you'll mill 5 cards that you just did not want to mill. So you'll have 5 in your drop, and it feels pretty bad. So let's say like I have a Unison in my hand. I actually did this play one time because I kind of just had a gut feeling I wasn't going to mill anything good. I kept this in my opening hand, and I kept my Unison in my opening hand. So going second on my first energy, my opponent tapped out for some 1-drop or something. I milled 5, nothing good, nothing played for my drop area. I paid 1 to play my Unison, and then I discarded a card to give it the plus 2 markers in the 10k, and then I had 6 in my drop area to go into this guy. And landing a double strike crit on turn 1 where your opponent is pretty much defenseless, this is actually quite relevant for me over the course of the weekend. And then some games, you just need that final attacker like to go for game, and you don't have any energy to use, you don't have any more free plays to get. So this guy just comes in and cleans up the game. There are going to be many scenarios where you don't want to overwhelm, you know, in the later parts of the game unless you know it's the guaranteed game. So you do have to know when to drop this guy or not. It's pretty much either turn 1, turn 2, or just for the late game finish. Nothing really in between. But to say all that, he was a very good card for sure. Alright, then we have some more standard stuff for Boo, pretty self-explanatory. We have 2 Mass Sand. Some decks still fold to this card. Not many of the set 11 decks do actually, like Gotenks, Red Broly, Gogeta. They don't really care about this card too much, so 2 is okay. It's more now like a rogue killer, I would say. It doesn't actually do too much to the meta decks, in my opinion. I played 2 Fu Mission Accomplished. A lot of Vegeks lists are dropping this card, and there are successful Vegeks lists that aren't playing it, so you probably don't need it, but actually I just wanted to play 2 to see if it was still good enough without picking up Bibidi, and I still really liked it. So I'm going to keep this card at 2. I don't think you need 4 by any means. I think 2 to 3 is the right number, but 2 was good for me. 2 Kai. I went back and forth on 2 and 3. I think because you're not hyper aggressive anymore, 2 to 3 is the right number. I ended up going with 2, and it was okay. Now for the negate lineup, Max Power Kamehameha was an absolute MVP over the weekend. Warping Red Gogetas, warping Gotenkses. I should mention too that I got 2nd and 4th place at the 2 locals I went to. Not that they were like super premier events or anything, but this deck just seemed to be very good in terms of getting me to those tops and getting me some tournament packs, which are very hard to come by now. But anyways, Max Power was absolute MVP, both negating and getting it back to my hand, and then the removal was excellent. And then 2 Power Burst. I honestly probably should not be playing this card. Power Burst is no longer just like the premier automatic black negate that you should play, because we have Max Power Kamehameha and Protect of the People, which was in my side deck, which I'll get to in a second. But Power Burst does have good synergy in the deck. Sometimes you do have to get your life lower, like I mentioned before, the Super Combo Dilemma. You do have good 1-drops to pick up in this deck, namely the Supreme Kai 1-drop. But Protect of the People and Max Power Kamehameha just do so much more. Like, whenever one of those cards was relevant, I just always sided this out. I probably, honestly, should just play 2 Max Power and 2 Protector in the main. But, I don't know, Max Power still feels kind of good, but it's always one of those cards you just side out. Anyways, this is the side deck now. 1 Vegeks in the side deck for when I needed it for like some swarmy decks like Agent of Destruction. There actually was a Ginyu player at my local. Shout out to Larry there. So yeah, this card was relevant and in the side deck as a 2nd copy. We had 1 more Dark Power Black Mass Sand just for the decks that it was good against. We had 3 Haru. This card is definitely making a strong comeback. Haru is really good right now. There's just Gotenks, there's Shinsenron, there's so many good green and yellow decks that this card is just really good against. And this deck in particular, the Mill 2 is more relevant than it's ever been. So it just feels so good to put these in against the green and yellow decks, especially when you do want to be more aggressive, especially against like Shinsenron and the like. 2 Seaguard Entity Mass Sand. I think I maybe sided it in once. I never actually casted it. You do kind of want that wide removal sometimes, but again, you really don't want to overwhelm in the mid game. So if you don't see it early enough, it actually feels pretty bad. So maybe the deck has to find another way to deal with wide removal. Maybe if that's like 1-drop Kami, or maybe like unexpected turn. Those could be better alternatives. Yeah, I wasn't too in love with the secret identity there. We did play 3 Protector of the People. This is just like your version of Sensu Bean in a sense. You need this for like the 15k aggro decks. You need this for Obunis. So this card was quite relevant. But I think Max Power was a bit more relevant, so that's why I mained that over Protector. Then I side deck 3 Makika Bora. There are just so many decks this is good against. It should probably be an immediate consideration for any side deck you're playing in any deck, just like Dark Power Black Mass Sand is. It was just so good. I called so many like Gogetas with this. I called Gotenks 6-drop, and it really just gives you an extra turn in a sense when these decks can't rely on their chains. Because in set 11 there are so many chains like Majin Vegeta, Red Broly, Gogeta 6-drop, Gotenks, that kind of stuff. And this just stops them from playing that. I mean, people played this against me too and called Vegeks 6, and that actually was pretty good for them in certain scenarios. But the cool thing about it is the 15k, so it actually helps let you apply pressure. So I would specifically use this on turns where I knew I had like a Vegeta in play and some other stuff I could get onto the field, follow up with this guy. They couldn't make their main play on their next turn, and then I could follow up with like a Vegeks fusion or something along the line, just so I can keep the pressure up and not really fall prey to anything that they could possibly do to me. And then finally, 2 more Max Power on the side. This came in against Gotenks, came in against Red Gogeta. It was very, very strong to have the extra 2 copies in the side deck. But anyway, guys, my deck profile / bit of discussion, just where Vegeks stands right now, how good it is or is not. I do want to know what you guys think in the comments below. I really do value you guys' opinions. Let me know. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time.